My Archrival Got Me Pregnant. Episode 4. Julian, are you demolishing the place? Came a familiar voice from the hallway. Lucas Shaw was balancing a laptop in one hand as he knocked on the bathroom door with the other. What's going on in there? Julian's eyelashes trembled slightly. He didn't answer. Lucas frowned at the locked door. You're acting weird, Julian. On any other day, Julian would have shot back something like takes 1, 2, no 1. But this time, there was only silence. That silence made Lucas uneasy. All right, so that's how it's going to be, he said, giving the doorknob a nudge. 2 options. Either open this door yourself, or I'll kick it down. I've been meaning to call a locksmith anyway. Shut up. The voice that came through the door was low and muffled, but Lucas caught the slight tremble underneath the words, like someone trying hard to sound composed but barely holding it together. His expression changed instantly. He pressed his headset, turned on his mic, and said to the students in his meeting, "Sorry, something's come up. Those of you who haven't finished your presentations, email me your slides. I'll schedule a follow-up later." He ended the call, set the laptop aside, rolled up his sleeves, and walked up to the bathroom door. Then he kicked. With a loud crack, the lock broke. The door swung open like a snapped kite string. Lucas leaned forward anxiously. The floor was littered with shattered mirror shards. The air was still misty from the recent shower. Julian stood shirtless before the broken mirror. His damp hair was still dripping, jet black against the steam. His pale skin glowed under the condensation, faint blue veins just visible beneath the surface. He had broad shoulders and a narrow waist, a remarkably fit body. Vivid red mole sat in the center of his chest. Below that, a slightly rounded belly. It shouldn't have been there, but somehow it didn't feel out of place. There was a strange, quiet harmony to the image, enough to make someone's thoughts wander. Lucas quickly looked away, eyes falling to the ground. He grabbed a towel and draped it over Julian's shoulders. Julian gave him a glance, tossed the towel aside, slipped on a shirt, and walked straight out of the bathroom to grab the first aid kit. Lucas finally looked back and saw the blood on the floor. "Are you out of your mind?" he snapped, following Julian. He saw the wound on Julian's hand and yanked the first aid kit from him. "Sit down." Julian shot him a calm look. When he didn't move, Lucas grabbed his shoulders and forced him onto the sofa. He threw a pillow onto Julian's lap and set his hand on top. Julian tried to pull back, but Lucas held his wrist firmly, glaring until he gave up and stayed still. Then Lucas turned to the kit and started pulling out supplies. Julian's kit was well stocked. Lucas picked out what he needed, poured 75% alcohol into a plastic cup, dropped a pair of tweezers into it, then took out iodine and cotton swabs. He flicked on a flashlight and handed it to Julian. "Hold this." This time, Julian didn't argue. He lit the wound with steady hands. The injury wasn't deep, but it had bled a lot. When Lucas dabbed iodine along the cut, small fragments of glass became visible. Julian hissed softly at the sting, and Lucas's face darkened further. "Awfully clear-headed for someone who just lost it," Lucas muttered, voice sharp with sarcasm. "You had the sense to use your left hand. Knew to grab the first aid kit right after. If your hands are that precious, why the hell are you using them to punch mirrors?" He heated the tweezers over a flame, let the alcohol burn off, then began carefully picking out the tiny shards from Julian's skin. Julian watched his gloved hands. The latex was smooth and sterile against his skin. "It's just a 200 yuan fine," Lucas continued. "You want me to pay it for you?" He really couldn't understand how something so trivial had driven Julian to this point. Julian knew he'd overreacted, but once emotion spiraled, logic became irrelevant, and even now he hadn't fully come back to rationality. Instead of answering, he suddenly asked, "When you found out I was pregnant, what were you thinking?" Lucas froze. For a moment, He seemed to realize what this was really about. His righteous anger faded, replaced by something softer. Even his hands paused ever so slightly. The overhead light cast soft shadows beneath his eyes, hiding his expression. Julian didn't press him. His gaze rested quietly on their joined hands, waiting. After a long pause, Lucas finally said, "Julian, forget all the labels you've been taught, all the boxes they've put you in. You think of yourself as a man? Then you're a man. As for the pregnancy, I had a lot of thoughts, but I swear I never once looked down on you." Julian looked up in surprise. He hadn't expected Lucas to understand him so quickly, just from a smashed mirror and one vague question. "You know me," Lucas continued. "I've always been full of myself, never really admired anyone before." He glanced at Julian. "You're the first. I've thought about it over and over. What would I do if it had been me? And honestly, I'd probably have jumped off the top of Jiwa's building by now." He looked at him seriously. "You're tougher than me, Julian. I wouldn't have made it this far." Outside, the wind rushed against Julian's cheek. His eyes flickered ever so slightly. He never thought that after 10 years of butting heads with Lucas, he'd hear those words, "You're stronger than me." He didn't know whether to take them as genuine or just well-crafted comfort from a smooth talker. But real or not, those words soothed something deep in his chest. Lucas didn't seem to notice. He kept speaking. "This morning before work, I listed my apartment for sale," he said. Suddenly, Julian blinked. "Your apartment?" Lucas nodded. "At first, I told you to keep the baby because I felt responsible. I didn't have the money to send you overseas for the surgery, so I figured if you couldn't accept the child, then I'd take over. At least I'd be doing my part. But now I realize that was selfish. I've never been a dad. I've never even had a serious boyfriend. I didn't know how to truly put myself in your shoes. I just kept thinking, if I take responsibility for the child, everything's fine. But from the day of that prenatal checkup until now, you've never told me if you plan to keep the baby. And I've been wondering what you were thinking." He lowered his eyes. "But I think I know the answer now." He gently dabbed Julian's wound. "I listed the apartment at the lowest possible price. Also put up one of my cars. If everything goes well, I can sell them within a week. I also applied for a visa to the States. If you're willing to wait, I'll go with you to find Dr. Ken. If not, you go first. The second I get my visa, I'll catch up. Used cars aren't selling well lately, but the housing market in a city's still stable. It should be enough. And if it's not, I'll find another way." He looked at Julian and promised, "Whether it's 20,000 or 2 million, if he's willing to do the surgery, I'll make it happen." He lowered his voice. "You know me. I didn't grow up rich. Just started working a few years ago. That apartment is all I've got. It's still mortgaged to the bank. So I wanted to ask, even if you're tired of me, could you let me stay a few more months? At least until I get approved for a staff dorm. Once the surgery's done, I can take care of you for a while. I was going to wait until the sale went through to tell you," he muttered, dabbing iodine onto Julian's hand. "Who knew you'd go punch a mirror? Today, wound's clean. No need for stitches." He asked, "Does it still hurt?" Julian looked at him, then slowly shook his head. "Move your fingers. Any numbness?" "I checked," Julian said. "Didn't hit any tendons or nerves." "Good thing your mirror's poor quality," Lucas muttered, inspecting his hand. "These hands are half the pride of our department. Don't go ruining your career over a mood swing." He wrapped the wound with white gauze, loosely but neatly, and tied it off with a clean bow. Then he gave Julian's pinky a gentle pat. "All done." He got up, picked the hairdryer off the bathroom floor, and tested it. Still worked fine, more durable than the mirror, apparently. He plugged it in, stood behind Julian, and began drying his hair. The semi-wet strands had cooled a bit, The warm air blew over the back of Julian's neck, gentle and ticklish. Some breeze reached his forehead. Julian closed his eyes. The heat felt like winter sunlight, soft, comforting. Lucas ran his fingers through Julian's hair, untangling it gently. Julian shifted slightly. "Don't move," Lucas said, pressing a hand to his shoulder. "You'll get burned." Feel good?" "It's fine." "Really?" Lucas smiled. "This is my first time drying someone else's hair. Didn't know I had a knack for it. Think I could open a salon after I retire?" "No. Why not? You just admitted I'm good. I already have a name picked out. Hell Hair Studio." "Julian, did you know the guy who ran Hell Bar got arrested?" Julian asked. "Nope," Lucas said. "All the better. I'll carry on his legacy. Build a whole franchise, accepting payment in ghost coins." "Julian, why are you like this?" Lucas flicked off the dryer and looked at his. "Work, all done. You should sleep." He tossed the dryer onto the coffee table, stretched, and yawned. Julian suddenly turned to look at him. Lucas froze mid-yawn. "Why are you looking at me like that?" He leaned in with a grin. "What? Just realized how good-looking I am?" Julian snorted. "Put away the first aid kit. You sound just like my mom," Lucas muttered as he cleaned up neatly, organizing everything and putting it back in place. "Your bedroom's a disaster. I don't see you cleaning that up." Julian didn't reply. He stared at him for a while, then said quietly, "I don't agree with you selling the apartment." Hearing that, Lucas Shaw froze for a second. Then, after a long pause, he turned to Julian Grant and said, "Then it's settled. It's not like I don't have a salary. If the money's gone, I'll earn more." Before Julian could respond, Lucas changed the subject. "Are you hungry? I'll go make you something to eat." "No." Lucas. But the moment Julian looked like he was about to bring up the house selling topic again, Lucas rushed toward the kitchen. As he wandered past the kitchen entrance, he suddenly discovered a towering wall of instant beef ramen piled up against the wall, like something straight out of a wholesale warehouse. Julian's voice chased after him. "Lucas, listen to me." "Julian." Lucas cut him off. "What is wrong with you? All instant noodles taste the same. Aren't you tired of this flavor yet?" "Lucas." Before Julian could finish, Lucas walked up, grabbed his shoulders, and steered him back toward the bedroom. "You need sleep. Rest helps you recover. Your parasympathetic system is more active at night, and if you stay up, you might struggle to fall asleep. Even if you don't want to sleep, our daughter should, right? Early to bed, early to rise. Be a good role model. So, what do you want for breakfast tomorrow?" Lucas talked non-stop like a waterfall. He smoothly pushed and guided Julian back to the bedroom, tucked him into bed, and pulled the blanket up. Just before Julian could speak again, Lucas darted out of the room, and even thoughtfully closed the door behind him. He remembered the lock had recently broken, so he braced the door lightly with his hand. Surprisingly, no pillow came flying at him this time. Lucas stood there for a few seconds, staring at the closed door. For once, his thoughts wandered. Only when his stomach grumbled did he snap out of it and head toward the kitchen. Julian's kitchen was simple. One glance, and you could see the entire layout. Lucas and the Great Ramen Tower made eye contact across the room, and after a brief mental duel, he decided to open the fridge instead, and thus began Lucas's midnight hunt, only to be met with what could only be described as a barren wasteland. Julian's fridge was spotless. Not a single odor, not a single crumb, not even a condiment packet. Lucas suspected the fridge had never been used. Even the display models at the electronics store had more life in them. Was Julian a fasting immortal? Lucas stood dumbfounded in front of the fridge for a while. After triple checking that there was truly nothing edible in the house other than the ramen wall, he turned to it with dead eyes. For a moment, He could almost see those smug little beef noodle cups, smirking back at him. Fine. Julian wasn't hungry, but Lucas definitely was. And besides, he figured, it was time he started getting used to the ramen lifestyle. He pulled 2 containers from the stack, peeled the lids, and filled them with hot water. The unexpected events tonight had interrupted his work. Now that he was waiting for the noodles to soak, Lucas opened his tablet and began skimming through the research progress reports sent by his students. A few minutes later, he frowned and muttered, "Your thesis is already garbage, and you can't even make a decent PowerPoint?" Frustrated, he tossed the tablet aside, picked up the steaming ramen bowls, and made his way to Julian's bedroom door. This time, he remembered to knock, but his hands were full. So he gave the door a few bumps with his knee. The lock was still broken, and a slight nudge was enough to swing the door open. Julian, lying in bed, glanced at him. "Lucas Shaw, I don't agree." "No talking about selling the house," Lucas interrupted immediately. "Or I swear I'll tell Dr. Monroe your injury was from punching a mirror." Julian paused. "Then, can I talk about knocking?" "I did knock." Lucas lifted the 2 bright red ramen bowls. "I just didn't have hands." He walked inside, but Julian suddenly sat up straight. "Take it out." "Huh?" Julian pointed toward the window. "If you dare eat ramen in my bedroom, you're sleeping on the streets. You're unbelievable," Lucas muttered. "Where do you even get these rules? Who spoiled you like this? I thought seeing your messy bedroom meant we were kindred spirits." He glanced around, preparing to joke about the plush toys that had haunted his dreams all night, only to realize they were gone. Every single one, except for the long-eared bunny beside Julian. All the stuffed animals had vanished. The room was clean. Lucas's blood ran cold. "Julian?" he asked, voice uncertain. "Can you see the stuffed animals in this room?" "I put them away," Julian replied flatly. "You had a nightmare last night," Julian continued. "Talked in your sleep, loud enough to wake the dead." Lucas's expression crumpled. "As if you don't talk in your sleep. What did I say?" Julian raised an eyebrow. Lucas recalled those 5 cruel dream words and decided repeating them would be self-inflicted humiliation. He stared off and muttered, "I won't stoop to your level." Julian looked at him like he was full of it. "You're an adult. Are you really afraid of stuffed animals?" That did it. Lucas stormed back to the dining table with both bowls of ramen and devoured them himself. Not a single bite for Julian. Afterward, he cleaned up the broken glass in the bathroom, confirmed the next day's student meeting times, and tiptoed back into the bedroom. The lights were off. Julian was already lying in bed. Lucas assumed he was asleep. He was just about to kick off his shoes and lie down on his makeshift floor bed when... "Lucas, Jesus." Lucas clutched his chest. "Do you have to do that at night?" "What, now? You've got clinic duty tomorrow." Julian was silent for a while. As Lucas's eyes adjusted to the dark, he could finally make out his expression. "I have something to tell you," Julian said. "About the house?" Lucas raised an imaginary earplug. "No, not that." Lucas let out a breath of relief. "I spoke to Tang Ki. His contact at the journal said there was an issue with the editorial review. Dr. Ken's paper might not get published anytime soon. He suggested I prepare for the worst. And there's something else I haven't told you." Julian paused. "I still haven't received my visa, so about your suggestion at the prenatal exam." He looked at Lucas. "I think keeping the baby is probably our best option now." Lucas was stunned. Of all the directions Julian's speech could have gone, this was the one he hadn't expected. No matter the circumstances, this was the first time Julian, the same man who had once insisted on terminating the pregnancy, had willingly suggested keeping the child. Julian continued, "Forget what you said earlier. I'm not letting you sell your house. I'm not ruining your life savings for this. You promised not to bring up the house." "Julian," Lucas said, It's not about the money. I owe you this. Julian's tone sharpened. Cut the crap. What are you, some tragic hero? Selling your house, your car? What's next, your kidney? So I'm the evil landlord exploiting your suffering? You're the father, and I'm not? Stop acting like I'm the villain and you're the saint. I didn't let you move in to repay some debt. I let you in because, damn it, can you please just adjust your damn mindset? He delivered the whole speech in one breath. Clearly, he'd rehearsed it. He didn't even give Lucas a chance to interrupt. Lucas sat there, speechless. Julian had always preferred eye rolls and death stares over words. He never said more than he had to, but now, he was spitting out sentences, like machine gun fire, and then silence. The room went still. Julian finally looked over and asked, "Do you remember that debate back in junior year, when we represented the school?" Lucas was still dazed from the baby news and that verbal assault. He nodded absent-mindedly. "What did you say back then?" Julian prompted. Lucas thought hard. No idea. The debate final had been about competition versus cooperation. The opposing school had drawn the argument that competition was more important. Their example, fertilization. Millions of sperm raced to fertilize one egg. Only the fastest and strongest would succeed. Lucas had laughed back then. Standing beside Julian, he'd delivered his argument with flair. Fertilization is actually a process of cooperation. Sperm that arrive first sacrifice themselves to break down the outer membrane. Only by their teamwork does the final lucky one get through. The sperm that fertilizes the egg isn't the best. It's the luckiest, made possible by countless others, helping along the way. Without cooperation, Lucas had said, even the strongest competitors can't succeed. Sunlight had slanted across the debate room that day, lighting up Lucas's face. His eyes had gleamed. Julian had remembered that moment for years. He remembered Lucas's shirt color, remembered the undone button, remembered the cocky smile, the defiant tilt of his head when he finished speaking. And now Lucas didn't remember any of it. "Lucas," Julian said quietly, "pregnancy is a cooperative process. I let you move in because you said." He looked down. "You're the father too." Silence. Lucas stared. His throat bobbed. "What do you mean?" Julian looked utterly disappointed. He turned away and rolled onto his side. "It means if you mention selling the house one more time," he said, "you can get the hell out." Early in the morning, a sharp doorbell shattered Julian Grant's peaceful sleep. He yawned and got up, annoyed. He finally had a morning off, but hadn't even made it to 8 a.m. before some unexpected guest showed up. Who was coming this early? Julian opened the door with a blank expression, every eyelash screaming, irritation. Outside stood a young guy in black clothes holding a large delivery bag, a receipt, and a clipboard. Cautiously, he asked, "Is Professor Shaw home?" Julian tilted his head toward the inside and shouted, "Lucas!" No response. He resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Lucas Shaw's sleep schedule was an enigma. You'd think he was a heavy sleeper. Yet every time Julian had cramps at night and tossed the pink bunny under the bed, Lucas would bolt upright to massage his leg. But now, completely unresponsive. "I'll sign for it," Julian said. "What is it?" "Some lab equipment, pipettes, graduated cylinders, beakers, that kind of stuff." No wonder the logo on the delivery bag had looked familiar. Their labs were next to each other, and when Lucas's students ordered supplies, deliveries often came to the shared hallway. The delivery guy had called him Professor Shaw out of habit. Julian signed for the package, dumped the box in the living room, then went to the bedroom and kicked the bed. "Why are your lab orders getting delivered to my place?" Lucas opened one bleary eye. "That's not for the lab. I bought it for you." Julian frowned. "What do I need all this for? Planning to open a satellite lab in my apartment?" I figured I'd start making you late-night snacks. That way you don't have to eat ramen all the time." Julian raised an eyebrow. "And you're using pipettes and beakers to cook? For precise measurements. I think there's a digital scale in there too." Lucas's voice was lazy, hair messy across his forehead. "One of my new grad students taught me. Said cooking and chemistry are the same thing. You'll see. I'll show off tonight." Julian got the point instantly. "So you don't actually know how to cook? Give me some faith, would you?" Lucas mumbled as he checked his phone. Then he swore. "Damn, Julian. My student's paper just got rejected again." Julian expressionlessly patted his head like a dog. Lucas groaned. How could the reviewers be so heartless? "I've been rewriting that paper with him for 3 months. Changed journals. Multiple times. At this point, the kid doesn't even recognize it as his own work. And still, no dice." Suddenly, young Dr. Shaw looked incredibly world-weary. He forwarded a few memes about supervisors going bald from revising theses, then touched his still thick black hair and sighed. "Mentoring is harder than doing research yourself." Julian offered his seasoned take. "If you'd written the paper yourself, it probably would have passed." Lucas tossed his phone aside, stretched, and mumbled, "Why did I ever go into clinical medicine? Being a doctor means juggling research, teaching, and patients. I'm busier than a donkey on a farm." Julian added, "You forgot admin work." "Oh, right. So it's research, teaching, clinical, and admin. 4 jobs in 1. Lucas buried his head in a pillow. "I was up reading papers till 3. Honestly, I should have just inherited my uncle's 2 acres of farmland. Remember Liu Tong from our class? Switched to basic sciences, then did a postdoc at the agriculture school. Now he sends me photos of him making homemade wine in a field like some modern-day Tao Yuan Ming. Can't transfer back to an agricultural hukou anymore," Julian said. "It's restricted. There goes another dream." Lucas sighed. "My only hope now is that funding announcement next week. If I don't get it, I might as well shut it all down." He was being dramatic. "What day's the announcement?" "Tuesday." "Got it." Lucas nodded. "I'm thinking of taking my mom to the temple this weekend to pray. Want me to light a stick of incense for you too?" Grants are a researcher's lifeblood. No matter how brilliant or accomplished you are, once you step into academia, you're bound to a lifetime of chasing funding. The bigger the grant, the tougher the competition, and the one Lucas and Julian had applied for was among the most difficult. Julian had been only half listening, but something about Lucas's rambling caught him off guard. Maybe it was the cozy morning air, or the rare peace of a day off, the mindless banter, the slow pace, the smell of sleep and soft blankets. Something about it made Julian feel something unfamiliar, warm. He hadn't felt this in a long time. Since leaving home for college, his life had been filled with study, work, patients, and hospitals. His apartment had always been just a place to sleep, never felt like home. But today, for the first time in a city, it almost did. Lucas misread Julian's silence. He chuckled. "No need to be shy. It's just a temple trip." Julian felt oddly embarrassed. He threw a pillow at Lucas. "Superstition. Get up." Lucas hugged the pillow and grinned. "Let me touch the baby, and I'll get up." Julian rolled his eyes. Since their talk that night, Lucas had stopped mentioning house sales or compensations, but for some reason, he'd also started pushing boundaries, like insisting on sharing days off or trying to sneak a hand onto Julian's stomach every chance he got. "Then lie there forever," Julian said coldly, walking out of the room. Without so much as a backward glance, Lucas had no intention of lying around forever. He rolled on the floor for a while, then lazily got up. It was his day off too. When he saw Julian reaching for ramen again, he couldn't help but say, "Put that down." Julian gave him a weird look, just in time to see Lucas pulling out beakers, pipettes, graduated cylinders, and a digital scale, laying them all out across the kitchen. "The fridge is empty," Julian pointed out. "Funny you should say that." Lucas opened the fridge, revealing it was now fully stocked. Julian was stunned. It had been empty just yesterday. "I hit the supermarket after work last night," Lucas explained. "You were on night shift?" Since the mirror-breaking incident, they'd started coming home around the same time, though they still walked separate paths and drove separate cars. That brief stretch between the parking lot and front door had become their shared moment. After getting home, Julian usually worked a bit while Lucas showered. Then they'd switch. Sometimes they talked about work, sometimes they bickered over petty chores, but most days, they were just tired and quiet. This kind of relaxed morning? It was a first. "You're really cooking with this stuff?" Julian looked around the kitchen, skeptical. "I feel like I'm about to get poisoned." Lucas clearly believed in his grad student's logic. He threw on a floral apron, bought with the groceries, fired up the stove, and nearly got blown into the afterlife by a burst of flame. He staggered back. The flame sputtered out with a dramatic hiss, and silence filled the kitchen. "What the hell?" Julian replied calmly. "Hasn't been used in half a year. Usually only his parents cooked here. But with both still working and living in another city, they didn't visit often. An unused gas stove inevitably developed issues." Lucas was stunned. "You really are a delicate young lady, huh?" He wasn't great at cooking either, but this was a new low. He tried reigniting the flame, but no luck. After a few attempts, the kitchen filled with the acrid smell of gas. He coughed. "Think it's a leak?" Julian stayed chill. "Doubt it." Lucas sighed, took off the apron, grabbed the keys from the hallway, and said, "I'm buying breakfast. I'll call a repair guy while I'm at it." Julian reminded him, "Go to the street on the left. Don't let that locksmith from the other day see us again." He really didn't want anyone thinking their apartment was cursed, with 2 broken doors and now a dead stove. The repair guy was efficient. They had just finished eating when he showed up. After fixing the stove, he handed Lucas a fat stack of business cards and chuckled. "Mr. Shaw, I remember you. You had us fix 2 doors. Already, right?" Lucas and Julian looked at each other. Before Julian could say anything, Lucas quickly explained, "I really went to the left street this time." "Ha! Don't worry," the repairman said. "Both streets are ours. We've got a full log of every repair in Yuefeng Apartments. You guys break stuff. We fix it. Teamwork." He pointed at the cards. "We do everything. Plumbing, lights, appliances. If you break one more thing, you'll be VIPs. Next time, call us again." He winked and walked off, texting on his phone. Julian was pretty sure the guy had just posted in some group chat. Yuefeng Apartments 3 to 4 minus 1,202. 2 golden customers. 2 doors and a stove in 1 week. VIP status pending. "Honestly, I don't want to be a very important person," Julian muttered. "Same," Lucas said, flipping through the colorful cards. "I suddenly feel like giving people hospital parking passes is just as dumb. We're no better." "I've given them out too," Julian admitted. They looked at each other, shared a moment of silent guilt and mutual regret. "Next time, we should give something else." Lucas pointed to the repaired stove. "How about a meal cooked by me?" Julian looked him up and down. "In that case, I think a parking pass might still be the safer option." After breakfast, Julian Grant followed his routine and went into the study to work. Ever since Lucas Shaw moved in, the room, and even the desk, had been split in half, becoming a shared home office for the two of them. But by the time Julian finished up, Lucas still hadn't shown up. Julian checked the clock. It was already noon. He frowned slightly. Lucas's workaholic tendencies matched his own. If they were home, Lucas was never one to disappear from the study for so long, except when he was sleeping. Julian pushed open the door to check what Lucas had been doing all morning, only to be greeted by a kitchen in utter chaos, and Lucas, proudly holding a plate of something black and unidentifiable. Julian. He couldn't believe Lucas was still this determined. "You're out?" "Great timing," Lucas said. "I was just about to call you." Set down the plate and gestured at it, fresh off the stove. "Behold, my masterpiece." He handed Julian a pair of chopsticks, his face brimming with pride. He might as well have had "Please Praise Me" tattooed on his forehead. Julian stared at him in disbelief. How could someone this confident genuinely think this thing was edible? He had once thought Lucas just had questionable taste, like the time he said the Hell Bar logo had great color contrast, but now he seriously suspected something was wrong with Lucas's eyes. "What is this?" Julian finally asked. "A bomb? Can't you tell?" Lucas looked offended. "It's tiger skin peppers. The tiger stripes must have all turned to ash. Not even an African tiger would have stripes this uniformly black." Julian took a deep breath and decided he was ordering takeout for lunch. Lucas, meanwhile, was totally oblivious to how bad his cooking was. He picked up a piece of the so-called pepper and dropped it into Julian's bowl. "I measured everything exactly like the online recipe, down to 2 decimal places. The taste should be perfect." "Yeah, well, if the heat control was that bad, even measuring to 100 decimal places wouldn't help. Try it?" Lucas looked at him, eyes full of anticipation. Julian glanced skeptically at the charred lump in his bowl. "You first." "Fine." Lucas grabbed one, took a big bite, chewed seriously for a moment. And then his smile slowly froze on his face. Julian watched as his confidence disappeared, replaced by sheer horror. Thankfully, while his eyes might be defective, his taste buds were still functional. Julian exhaled in relief. "What is this?" Lucas asked, staring at the half-eaten pepper in disbelief. He repeated Julian's earlier question word for word. "Tiger skin peppers," Julian replied calmly, savoring the moment. "Your words, not mine." Lucas went quiet. He spit the rest into a napkin, scooped the pepper out of Julian's bowl, and dumped the entire plate into the trash. "This is awful," he muttered, squatting beside the trash can, visibly shaken. "I don't get it. I used to ace every lab experiment back in school." "You mean the carbonization with concentrated sulfuric acid?" Julian quipped. When Lucas didn't reply, Julian glanced at him and saw the man, so recently full of flair, now sitting dejectedly by the trash, utterly defeated. A pang of guilt struck Julian. Was he being too harsh? He held back a biting comment that had reached the tip of his tongue, walked over, tapped Lucas's shoulder, and tried to come up with something remotely comforting. "Actually, Julian." "Wait." Lucas suddenly stood up. "Let me try again." "Excuse me?" Julian took a step back, horrified. "I'll do it again." Lucas repeated seriously, brows slightly furrowed like he was in a lab. "I think I know what went wrong." "Right. No sympathy deserved." Julian checked the time, and his not-so-patient stomach, whatever pity he'd had, vanished instantly. He gave up on being nice and said flatly, "I'd like to live a few more years, but our daughter would too," Julian interrupted, deadpan. "Lucas, maybe it was that last line, or maybe reality finally sunk in." Lucas sighed deeply and admitted defeat. "Fine. Let's eat out." They found a proper restaurant in the nearby mall. After a quick, normal lunch, Julian's taste buds and soul finally began to recover from the trauma of the tiger skin pepper. "Was it good?" Lucas asked with a pitiful look, eyeing Julian's clean plate. Julian paused, then gave a reluctant nod. Lucas shot up instantly. Julian grabbed him by the arm. "Where are you going?" To learn from the kitchen staff, Julian stood up and yanked him back. Lucas Shaw, some things just aren't your calling. Don't force it. It was one thing to destroy his own kitchen. Julian really didn't want to see them make headlines for blowing up a restaurant. Julian, Lucas huffed. One day, I'll cook your favorite dish, one so good that just hearing its name will make you think of me. Julian pointed at a nearby home goods store. Go buy yourself a nice pillow. Maybe you'll dream about it. Lucas turned to look, then suddenly stopped, eyes lighting up. Julian, look over there. Julian followed his gaze and realized they'd wandered in front of a baby store. It must have just opened. Colorful flower arrangements lined the front. Staff were handing out flyers and promoting inside. Through the window, they could see rows of cute toys and tiny clothes, like a miniature world. Want to go in? Lucas asked. Julian had never been to a baby store before. Technically, it made sense. They'd decided to keep the baby. But something about it made Julian feel awkward, especially with Lucas next to him. Naturally, Lucas, ever oblivious, didn't notice his hesitation. As he lingered, a salesperson came over and started enthusiastically explaining their promotions. Lucas struck up a conversation with her right away. Julian watched him chat effortlessly. Then the salesperson turned to him and asked, "Are you two shopping together?" Lucas nodded. "Perfect." She beamed. "We're running a buy two get one two off deal. Lots of moms come shopping together for their kids. But this is the first time I've seen two dads. If you each buy something, not only do you save money, but your kids can play with matching toys without fighting." She assumed they were just two dads shopping for their own kids, like any pair of mom friends. Lucas chuckled and clarified, "Actually, we're buying for the same child." "Oh, my mistake." The woman laughed. "So, whose kid is it? A niece? A younger sibling?" Julian and Lucas answered in perfect unison. "Our daughter." The salesperson froze, blinked twice, and swallowed whatever she'd been about to say. She looked at the two tall, well-dressed men in front of her and suddenly remembered a drama she once watched, where the heroine looked at two men and said, "You're both the child's father." Silence. She wondered what kind of woman could inspire this situation. Lucas, of course, remained blissfully unaware. His attention was already back on Julian, eyes full of excitement. The failed cooking incident was long forgotten. "If you don't want to go in," he said, "I will. Because I'm the one who loves her most." Oh no. It was a competition now. Julian could already imagine Lucas one day cradling their daughter, asking, "Do you love Daddy 1 or Daddy 2 more?" Why, he thought grimly. "Is this the child I'm having?" Expressionless, he muttered no way and walked straight into the store, heading directly for the most expensive stroller. He would not lose this fight. The salesperson who had failed to coax Julian into the store earlier now watched in awe as he stormed in and started revenge shopping. She stared, stunned, and sighed deeply. Was this a family tragedy or a double jackpot? The two soon-to-be dads, both eager to prove their love, went head-to-head in a full-blown shopping war. The store clerk didn't even need to pitch anymore. All she had to do was stand aside and occasionally explain something while they ransacked the place. Perfect, she thought. As long as they're spending money, who cares who the real dad is? Meanwhile, Julian Grant and Lucas Shaw were still locked in a silent, competitive frenzy, stuffing more and more items into their carts like two contestants on a game show. Round 1, Lucas agonized over Barbie dolls, finally selecting a top-tier pick and tossing it into the cart. When he turned around, he found Julian loading up on educational toys, blocks, ring puzzles, Rubik's cubes, brain teasers, filling up half the cart in no time. Round 2, Lucas added a deluxe Princess Castle playset. Just as he looked up, he caught Julian dropping an enormous puzzle box into his cart. Round 3, Lucas hadn't even moved yet when Julian came back with an armful of early learning books. Lucas finally couldn't take it. "Why are you buying so many books?" "To stimulate cognitive development," Julian replied. "So she doesn't grow up like you." "What's wrong with me?" Lucas argued. "I didn't read early learning books as a kid, and I still topped the entrance exams. And this puzzle set." Lucas lifted the giant puzzle box, pointing to the bold 1,000 pieces on the label. "You planning to make her cry at age 3? He picked up the books and shoved them back onto the shelf. "No kid likes this stuff. You're not even thinking from a child's perspective. I'm the one who truly loves her." Julian gave him a sharp look. "That's not love, that's spoiling." He didn't even argue further, just added more books to the cart. By the time they finally came to their senses, the cart was stuffed with toys and books. Lucas had even added a pink, bell-covered ride-on electric car meant for a 5-year-old. There was a moment of silence. Under Julian's steely gaze, Lucas silently returned the car to the shelf. When he came back, Julian began sorting through the items in the cart, pulling out any that looked remotely dangerous or poorly made. Lucas tried to argue, but Julian countered every choice with bulletproof logic, making each toy sound like a ticket to the ER. After a while, even, Lucas started second-guessing himself, seeing how expertly Julian identified the hazards of each toy. Lucas began to wonder, was Julian actually a pediatrician in disguise? After finishing the toy section, they moved on to clothes. Baby clothes were tiny and adorable, neatly arranged on racks like pastel. Candy. The variety rivaled adult fashion. Every cartoon character, print, and color imaginable. Julian gravitated toward the simplest section and studied fabric labels. With the scrutiny of someone reviewing a scientific paper, he even asked the sales associate detailed questions. His serious face, furrowed brows, and academic energy gave the sales associate flashbacks to her college thesis defense. By the time she answered his questions, she was sweating from stress. Eventually, Julian picked out several safe, soft, practical outfits. Just as he was about to drop them into the cart, Lucas threw in a pile of colorful, frilly dresses, complete with sequins, lace, and bold prints. They looked like something straight out of a princess cartoon. "These are way cuter," Lucas commented, eyeing Julian's plain ones. "Don't buy this boring stuff. Girls like looking pretty. Don't dress her like a tiny old man in white onesies." Julian frowned and shoved the frilly clothes back into Lucas's arms. Safety hazard. The sparkly embellishments and lace could irritate sensitive baby skin. Bright dyes could bleed or trigger allergies. Julian had considered it all. "No fun toys, no cute clothes," Lucas grumbled. "And you're buying a mountain of books before she's even born." "What's next?" 3 years old. "She's reading Shakespeare?" 4. "She's solving calculus?" 5. "You enroll in robotics?" 6. "She's off to Harvard?" "If I were your daughter," he said, "I wouldn't want to be born." Julian, naturally, took the opposite view. No child of his was going to fall behind. He had always been top of his class. His kid wasn't going to slack off. Lucas, though just as accomplished, a former national science exam champion, felt differently. He had already reached academic heights, seen the view from the top. That's why he didn't feel the need to push a child so hard. Letting kids have an easier life seemed better to him. Facing such a major ideological divide, Lucas finally offered, "Why don't we shop separately? You buy your stuff, I buy mine. Let her decide which she likes more when she's older." "Not happening," Julian said sternly. He'd heard enough to realize Lucas planned to spoil the kid rotten. "I'm warning you, don't think you're going to turn her into a little brat." "Well, I'll be the one raising her," Lucas shot back. "You won't have a say." Julian paused. Then, softer, he asked, "When did I ever say I was making you raise her? Alone?" "But..." Lucas Shaw faltered. Julian Grant had never said it outright. But wasn't that what he meant? Lucas had told him before. If Julian decided to keep the baby, and didn't want to be burdened or influenced by it, Lucas was willing to raise the child alone. Now, with the visa application stalled and the article delayed, Lucas knew Julian wasn't acting on emotion. He was simply out of options after weighing the pros and cons. That night, when Julian had gone from reminiscing to vague implications, Lucas hadn't really understood what he meant. Later that night, lying in bed thinking it over, Lucas had concluded Julian had agreed to his offer. So now, what did Julian mean by that comment? Was he saying he wanted to raise the baby together? Lucas felt like his brain had exploded. Julian glanced at him, pushed the shopping cart toward the checkout. And before Lucas could fully process what was happening, Julian had already paid the bill, realizing, too late, that he'd missed a golden opportunity to impress their daughter. Lucas finally caught up. You already paid? Then what am I even here for? Julian pointed at the tall stack of oversized shopping bags the cashier was packing. You carry them. Carry them where? Home. The mall was a 20-minute walk from Julian's apartment. Normally it was a relaxing stroll. But hauling these bags? Completely different story. Lucas stared at the huge, overstuffed bags, stunned. You're not going to drive back to pick me up? Do I need to? Julian raised an eyebrow. Or, are you saying you can't? Lucas, wasn't reverse psychology his thing? When did Julian get so good at it? On the tree-lined road from the mall to Julian's home, two young men of similar height walked one in front of the other. The one closest to the road was lugging all the heavy bags, lean arms visibly strained, veins popping from the effort. The other walked leisurely beside him, occasionally reminding him not to let the bags bump into street posts or trees. Honestly, it was an eye-catching scene. For some reason, Lucas muttered, I feel like I'm your pampered little toy boy right now. Julian took a sip from his soybean milk and replied evenly, not bad value. For the price, you're exploiting me, Lucas said with mock indignation. Julian walked with elegant ease. I'm training your arms. For what? Julian lightly bit the straw, his gaze suddenly unreadable. Lucas paused, something finally clicking in his brain. Was he being trained to carry the baby? So Julian really did want to raise the child with him? The thought that had been interrupted earlier came rushing back. Lucas's heart pounded faster. His palms began to sweat. He was afraid to ask. But if he didn't, his heart might literally pound its way out of his chest. Julian, Lucas finally said. For the sake of his cardiovascular health, what exactly did you mean back at the store? He swallowed. Are you saying you want to raise the baby on your own? Or do you mean you want us to? Julian stopped walking and turned to look at him. People say you're emotionally intelligent. Lucas took a deep breath. Then consider yourself the exception. If he ranked everyone he knew by difficulty, Julian would top the list. Not because Julian was complicated, but because Lucas lost all objectivity and logic around him. They'd gone from rivals to whatever this was. Lucas's emotions always ran high around Julian, and he couldn't assess or rationalize his actions the way he did with others. Lucas didn't even fully understand why. He often acted without thinking. Words spilled out, decisions were made on impulse. It felt like Julian existed solely to disrupt him. Despite knowing Julian for years, Lucas always felt like he didn't really know him. Back when he impulsively invited Julian to live with him, he'd regretted it multiple times. He thought Julian would scoff at him, maybe even mock him. But Julian didn't. Instead, he invited Lucas into his home. That night, Julian's offer had been abrupt, almost cold, a command, not a request. But later, Lucas couldn't wrap his head around it. This was Julian, and yet he tolerated Lucas living in his house, maintaining a fragile surface peace. Lucas figured it was probably because pregnancy was hard. Even someone as proud and self-reliant as Julian had to accept occasional help. But Julian's words today, combined with what he said that night, felt too much like a hint, maybe even a blatant signal. Objectively, Lucas knew what Julian meant, but subjectively, his inner chaos told him, there's no way. Because this wasn't a short-term situation. A child takes 18 years to raise. If Julian was serious, it meant the two of them, former sworn enemies, would be living together for at least 18 years. And they weren't even friends. Julian had to be out of his mind to suggest something like that. And yet, after Lucas muttered, "You're the exception," Julian fell silent. Lucas noticed his Adam's apple bobbing, saw the tips of his ears go slightly red. Lucas figured he'd misunderstood again. Julian probably didn't know how to respond. He felt awkward and tried to smooth it over. "I didn't mean anything weird. I just think you've already been through so much with the pregnancy and all." Then Julian interrupted him. "Would you be willing?" Lucas bit down on his tongue in shock. The busy street seemed to fall away. Lucas could hear nothing but his own heartbeat. For a moment, he wondered if Julian had been replaced by someone else. Julian turned his eyes forward. "You're not the only one who understands responsibility. I'm her biological father. I'll raise her to adulthood, whatever a two-parent household can give her. I'll try to provide." He'd planned to say this the night he told Lucas he was keeping the baby. But Lucas hadn't picked up on his hints. Julian got frustrated and gave up. Now he said, "If you want to co-parent, we can live together for now, as roommates. If you decide to leave later, I won't stop you. But kids grow attached. If you leave, you explain it to her. And if she doesn't want you to go, then for her mental health." Julian looked at him. "I won't let you, so think carefully before you answer," Julian said. "Either don't get involved at all or take the risk." He unlocked the door and stepped aside to let Lucas, who was still holding all the bags, go in first. "Of course," Julian added, "you're still her family. If you don't want to help raise her, I won't stop you from visiting. I promise I'll take good care of her. You don't have to worry she'll suffer with me." Julian Grant's words were full of sincerity. If divorcing couples at the Civil Affairs Office could speak this way, about commitment, not blame, the mediators there wouldn't be pulling their hair out. Who knows? Maybe some of those couples might even reconcile on the spot. But he and Lucas Shaw weren't two lovers patching up after a fight. They had never been in love. A surprise pregnancy had bound together two people who were supposed to be lifelong rivals, throwing their well-structured lives into disarray. Two young men who should have followed the traditional path, marriage, children, career, had watched that path veer completely off course. Julian thought Lucas might still find his way back to a normal life someday. But as for him, it was probably over. He could perhaps move on from the fact that he'd once slept with a man, but even if he ended the pregnancy now, he couldn't just go out and marry a woman like nothing had happened. His conscience wouldn't let him hide the truth from a future wife. But no matter how young, successful, or well-mannered Dr. Grant might be, what woman would accept a husband who had once been pregnant? Maybe there were a few saints in the world who could, but Julian had no interest in reopening that wound again and again just to find one. Fortunately, Julian had never been particularly drawn to marriage or romance, so he wasn't devastated or bitter, just slightly annoyed at the idea of explaining all this to his parents. Sometimes he thought, if he hadn't agreed to his parents' push to date Zhonglan, none of this would have happened. He wouldn't have gotten involved with Lucas that night, wouldn't have ended up with a child, wouldn't have lost the chance to marry anyone else ever again. It was, in a way, ironically poetic, like the universe had played a deliberate joke on him for not sticking to his beliefs. So this time, he had no plans to compromise. He didn't object to raising the child with Lucas. Being a doctor meant endless work. He was at the peak of his career, often on his feet from morning to night. Even with 3 heads and 6 arms, it would be a challenge to raise a child alone. Maybe he hadn't yet come to terms with everything that happened with Lucas, but in the face of parenthood, all their past grudges, and that one absurd night, no longer mattered. Still, just as he told Lucas, he didn't want him involved only to leave halfway. That would only hurt the child, so he had to make sure Lucas was all in. On the walk home, Lucas had been oddly quiet. Julian glanced over and saw him standing at the entryway, carefully spraying disinfectant on the shopping bags. It was Julian's own habit, but at some point, Lucas had learned and internalized nearly all of his routines. Honestly, Julian had no idea what kind of answer Lucas would give, but he knew whatever Lucas said, whether it made him happy or not, he would keep his expression neutral. Then, under his gaze, Lucas finally spoke. "Julian," he said, "I was top of my class my whole life, until I met you. For years now, it's always been neck and neck between us. I've always wanted to beat you, really beat you." He spoke while calmly spraying alcohol, the familiar scent curling into Julian's nose, somehow comforting. "But if the day comes when I finally surpass you, only because you've had to pour your time and energy into raising our kid while I stood by, doing nothing, then that kind of win would be meaningless." Because his hands were busy, Lucas didn't have to look at Julian, and for some reason this made it easier, made the weight of the moment more bearable. But when he reached his final line, he set the bottle down, met Julian's eyes, and said quietly, "I've already stayed single all these years because of you. What's one more lifetime?" His eyes were bright, reflecting the golden sunlight pouring in. There was something deep and tender in them, so much so that Julian had to turn his head away, unsettled. "What do you mean because of me?" Julian mumbled. "It's not like I stopped you from dating in college." Though he sounded annoyed, his lips curled ever so slightly at the corners. "You didn't stop me," Lucas said. "But you took up all my time." Thinking back, he laughed softly and added, "After class, I was always with you. Every study session, every practice exam. Except for eating, drinking, and sleeping, we were basically together more than most couples. At a medical university, study space was a luxury. Med school students fought over library seats. The elite 8-year clinical track was especially brutal, packed with the top scorers from across the country. Eventually, due to relentless complaints and petitions, the school gave the 8-year cohort their own classroom, unlocked 24/7, where the most intense overachievers could battle it out non-stop. So while others went on dates, joined clubs, or took breaks, Lucas and Julian sat in that room, side by side, locked in silent competition. "You think I didn't know?" Julian finally said, unable to hold back. "Every time you turned someone down, you blamed it on me." Girls had even come to Julian asking him to take a break, just one meal, so they could ask Lucas out. Julian hadn't understood at the time. He thought they were worried about his health, until one girl finally explained, "Lucas says he won't rest unless you do. I just want to have lunch with him. Can you rest for a lunch break?" Julian had walked away fuming. College was far more relaxed than high school. He'd had no shortage of suitors, male and female, but he'd always turned them down without involving Lucas. Now, years later, thinking about it still annoyed him. "I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings," Lucas said, eyes cast downward. "I've always been soft-hearted." He looked up with a grin. "Besides, I wasn't lying. If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have worked so hard in college." Julian believed that, because it had been the same for him. Before college, both of them had their own steady, well-balanced study rhythms. It was enough to keep them at the top of their classes. But once they met, neither could accept being second, and so they pushed each other, unintentionally changing their entire pace. Now, as Julian watched Lucas sorting baby supplies, a strange thought struck him. If he had never met Lucas, maybe he would have cruised through college, taken life slower, dated a few girls, even married by now, and Lucas would have done the same. But because of that absurd twist of fate, here they were, teammates, preparing to raise a child, and maybe even spend the rest of their lives together. Surprisingly, that didn't sound so bad. "Your phone's ringing," Lucas said, waving a hand in front of his face. His fingers brushed against Julian's forehead. Julian jolted, startled out of his thoughts. He saw Lucas pointing at his buzzing phone. "Don't touch me," Julian muttered, his expression unreadable. "Even your hair's off limits?" Lucas teased. "Didn't seem to bother you." "When I was drying it the other night." Julian didn't respond. He was too caught off guard by how long he'd just zoned out. He picked up the phone. Seeing the caller ID, he relaxed slightly. At least, it wasn't the hospital. "Mom?" he answered. "What's up?" "Julian, honey," his mother chirped. "What are you up to?" "Out with a nice girl, I hope?" "A nice girl?" "Not quite." He glanced at Lucas, this pain in the neck, and sighed. "I'm at home, resting." He expected her to launch into her usual spiel about finding a girlfriend, but she didn't. Just as he was wondering what miracle had silenced her, he heard the real reason. "Your dad and I are downstairs," she said sweetly. "We're here to visit you." Julian's stomach dropped. He looked up and locked eyes with Lucas. Lucas Shaw had no idea danger was approaching. He was sweating and just about to take off his jacket, but his arms were still sore from carrying all those bags and didn't quite have the strength. Noticing Julian Grant glancing over, Lucas wiped his forehead and stretched out his red, tired palms. He grinned. "My hands are numb. Can you help me unbutton this?" Julian immediately reached out and covered his mouth. Julian looked at his phone's blinking screen for a long moment and, for the first time in his life, wished the call was from the hospital instead. His parents always gave him plenty of notice before visiting. Most of the time, he even bought their train tickets for them. They were in their 50s and had no concept of surprise. A terrible thought crossed Julian's mind. Could this be a spot check? "Mom," he started to say, but Mrs. Grant cut him off. "Okay. Phone bills are expensive. I'm hanging up. Your dad and I are getting in the elevator. Now." Click. The call ended. Julian froze for a second, then suddenly snapped out of it. He pointed to the pile of baby supplies on the floor and yelled, "Quick, my parents are coming. Hide everything." "Your parents?" Lucas was stunned. Under Julian's urgent direction, he rushed to gather all the baby stuff and carry it into the study. While running, he rattled off questions. "Where are they now? Should we go meet them? Do they know we're living together? Should I sneak out?" Julian looked defeated. "They're in the elevator." "Crap," Lucas said. "A surprise visit? Do they do this often?" Julian weakly shook his head. "Something's off. You think they found out about the baby?" "Shut up." Julian shoved Lucas and all the bags into the study and locked the door behind him. The moment he turned around, the doorbell rang. Mr. and Mrs. Grant were simple, neatly dressed working-class folks from a small town. The moment the door opened, his mom looked at him and exclaimed, "You've lost weight." "Mom, Dad," Julian said, handing them slippers. "Work's been busy. Haven't had time to rest." "You're not living well," his mom said, clearly upset. "I told you to find a nice girl, but you never listen." Fine. I know you hate hearing this. Middle-aged moms have a special talent for repeating the same advice, no matter how often they've been told to stop. Julian had told his mom 1,000 times that he wasn't interested in marriage, but she never gave up. Back when he was in school, his cousin had warned him about parental nagging. He didn't believe it, until now, when he realized his mom could. make even his aunt seem chill. Julian rubbed his temples. "I'm doing just fine, Mom." "Julian, live your life the way you want." His dad chimed in. "Just don't stray from the right path." Julian wasn't sure what stray from the right path meant until his mom spotted something on the shoe rack. "Sweetie, do you have company over?" Julian's heart skipped a beat. "Those are my shoes." "Really?" She looked skeptical. "They don't look like your style." "Since when do you wear something like that?" Julian's gaze drifted. "Bought them randomly." But Mrs. Grant wasn't fooled. She marched straight into the kitchen. "Julian, don't lie to me. Someone's been cooking here." She opened the fridge to stash some homemade food and let out a gasp when she saw how well stocked it was. "I did the cooking." Julian lied, face unreadable. His mom snorted. "Yeah, right. You'd sooner fly to the moon than cook. Voluntarily." "I've discovered a love of domestic life." When she tried to head into the bedroom, Julian suddenly remembered the floor bed and quickly blocked the door. "Mom, it's messy in there. Don't go in." She gave him a long look but let it go, until another voice rang out from the bathroom. "Julian, why are there 2 sets of toothbrushes and cups?" Mr. Grant emerged from the bathroom, brows furrowed. Julian broke into a sweat. He hesitated, then blurted, "I got a dog. 1 sets for the dog. No dog hair anywhere," his mom declared like a courtroom judge. "Are you living with some girl?" "No." Julian was about to deny it again when something hit him. Wait a second. Lucas was a man. So even if his parents found out they were living together, so what? Why was he hiding this like it was some shameful secret? What exactly was he so guilty about? Julian suddenly realized how ridiculous he was being. He opened his mouth, ready to explain everything, but his mom dropped a bomb before he could speak. "Julian," she said gently, "just tell me the truth. Do you like men?" "What?" Turns out his guilt wasn't unjustified. His parents were seriously on another level. His blank stare read as confirmation. Mrs. Grant's face changed. Really do? Is it that Lucas Shaw?" Julian choked. Thank God he wasn't drinking water, or he'd have spit it everywhere. Where did she even come up with this stuff? "I don't like men," Julian said firmly. "And even if I did, I would never like Lucas Shaw." "But," his mom hesitated, "didn't you tell me on the phone that he was the reason you're not getting married?" Julian paused, and suddenly, it all clicked. That one phone call. Not long ago, she'd made her usual round of matchmaking suggestions, asking why he still didn't have a girlfriend. She even blamed herself for discouraging early dating when he was younger. Julian had gotten so fed up, and at that exact moment, Lucas had texted, saying he'd be working late and wouldn't walk home with him. In a fit of sarcasm, Julian had told his mom, "It's not your fault, Mom. Blame Lucas Shaw." She probably hadn't asked why. He'd expected her to. He'd even prepared an excuse, something about academic rivalry, but she never followed up. He had no idea that one offhand comment would lead to this. After that call, his parents had dug out an old newspaper article, reread it thoroughly, memorized Lucas's name and face, and immediately bought train tickets to a city. Julian was speechless. Lucas had used his name to dodge 100 suitors and never once slipped up. Julian used him as a scapegoat one time, and this happens. "Mom," he said, exasperated. "It's not like that. We're just co-workers." "Co-workers?" Mrs. Grant repeated in shock. "You work together?" "Crap." He slipped. His parents didn't even know what Lucas did for a living. Mrs. Grant narrowed her eyes. "Do you two spend a lot of time together?" Julian swallowed hard. "Not really. They'd only shared a bed and made a baby. Technically, that didn't count as spending time together, right?" Seeing him silent, she pressed again. "So who's staying in this apartment? With you?" Just a friend. You don't know him. Really?" Her voice was full of doubt. Mr. Grant exchanged a look with her, then said, "Then why don't you call Lucas over? Let's have dinner together." Julian didn't want Lucas to get dragged into this. He's busy with work. "You've got me. Our family hasn't had a meal together in ages." Mrs. Grant clearly didn't buy it. She pointed at his phone. "Call him now." Julian took a deep breath. "He's in surgery." Mrs. Grant narrowed her eyes. "So you know exactly what he's doing at this very moment?" Mr. Grant added helpfully. "If calling's hard, a text works too." "Yes. Text him," Mrs. Grant agreed. Now they were sitting one on each side of him, watching his every move. Julian's scalp prickled. Hands trembling, he unlocked his phone and began slowly typing, praying Lucas had muted his ringer. But just as he typed halfway, a phone rang in the study. Loud, cheerful, impossible to miss. Julian froze. Mrs. Grant froze. Their eyes met, both full of confusion. Inside the study, Lucas picked up the call with a low whisper. "Zhang. Chung, why are you whispering?" His friend replied, "Anyway, the file you sent me expired. Can you resend? You couldn't just text that? I thought I'd check in." "What, were you on a date or something?" Lucas didn't feel like explaining that he'd been locked in the study like a hidden lover. Truth was, if he'd just calmly greeted the parents and said he was a guest, none of this would be happening. But now, hiding in here, made everything look suspicious. Too late for regrets. And now, thanks to a forgotten ringtone, he was screwed. Julian turned the lock with great reluctance and opened the door under the heavy gaze of his parents. Lucas froze, smiled awkwardly, and gave a tiny wave. "Hi," Mrs. Grant blurted out. "Lucas Shaw?" Lucas blinked. "Auntie, you know me?" He had no idea what had just happened in the living room. Mrs. Grant didn't answer. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted straight into Mr. Grant's arms. Thankfully, Mrs. Grant was only emotionally overwhelmed. Her heart was fine. After 2 doctors administered first aid, she gradually recovered. She pointed a trembling finger at Julian Grant's nose. You, Mom," Julian groaned, ready to cry in justice like a tragic opera heroine. "There's really nothing going on between us. If you don't believe me, go. Check my bedroom. He sleeps on the floor." Mrs. Grant clutched her chest and gasped, "I'm not going anywhere." Julian instantly regretted blocking her from the bedroom earlier. He should have just let her see the 2 separate beds and come clean. He seriously wondered if Lucas Shaw had cursed him. Every time they were together, his usually calm brain turned to mush. Lucas had been following their conversation from the sidelines, and something about it felt off. He subtly hid his phone behind a throw pillow and quickly typed a message to Julian. "What's going on?" Julian's phone buzzed. He took a glance. Mrs. Grant immediately noticed. "What are you looking at?" "Hospital emergency," Julian lied smoothly. He swiftly switched to the contact screen, edited Lucas's name to Pharma Rep Mr. Zhang, then replied, "My mom thinks we're dating." Lucas's hands trembled. His phone slipped off the couch and hit the floor. Mr. Grant gave him a side eye. A chill ran down Lucas's spine. He quickly picked up his phone and typed, "Does your dad hit hard? Should I pre-book an orthopedic specialist before it's too late? No idea. He's never hit me." Julian added a line, "But my uncle used to be a professional bouncer." Lucas, trying to save the moment, Lucas put on his brightest smile. "Uncle, Auntie," he said, "there's really been a misunderstanding. Julian and I are just co-workers. I'm temporarily staying here because I had to sell my apartment due to debt. Julian kindly offered me a place to crash." Mrs. Grant pounced instantly. "If you're just co-workers, how would Julian know so much about your personal life?" Lucas cursed her sharp eye. Definitely someone who'd watched way too many crime dramas. But he didn't flinch. "Because I owe loan sharks. Even after selling the apartment, I couldn't pay it all off. One of them came to the hospital to threaten me, and Julian saw it happen. Mrs. Grant's eyes narrowed again. If that's true, aren't you worried they'll come here next? No, Lucas said, eyes earnest. Julian can fight. Those guys wouldn't stand a chance to sell the story. He even pulled a yellow slip of paper from his pocket. Julian recognized it instantly, the disciplinary notice Lucas had kept from the incident with the patient's angry relative. See this? Lucas handed it over. Some time ago, a patient's family tried to attack a doctor. Julian fought back without hesitation and got punished. For it, he's righteous and protective. That's why he couldn't stand seeing the loan sharks threaten me and offered me a place to stay. Julian. Was Lucas playing the role of poor bullied roommate now? Unreal. Mrs. Grant softened slightly. So, you're saying your entire department knows you're staying here? Not everyone. Just a few, Lucas said strategically. I'm not exactly proud of it. It's not something I want spread around. Thankfully, I've almost paid off the debt and already applied for a hospital dorm. I'll be moving out soon. He even pulled up the dorm application record to show her. If something were really going on between Julian and me, why would I bother moving out? Mrs. Grant took the phone, passed it to Mr. Grant, who pulled off his reading glasses and carefully examined the screen. Sure enough, it was a real application from Jua Hospital. He handed the phone back with a visibly more relaxed expression. Helping a coworker is a good deed, he said to Julian. Why were you so secretive? Lucas swooped in again, smiling. He was probably afraid you'd think he was being too nosy. Most parents wouldn't want their kid living with someone who owes loan sharks. He paused thoughtfully, then added, nowadays, people avoid trouble. Most folks teach their kids to stay out of it. But you too, you raised Julian to be brave. That's rare. Right on cue. Mrs. Grant beamed. She pointed at Mr. Grant proudly. His father once rescued a drowning high school student. He even got a district award for it. Really? Lucas turned to Julian in mock awe. Why didn't you ever tell me? Julian was mid-eye roll, struggling to keep a straight face. He hadn't even processed the comment when his mom suddenly asked, then why does not getting married have anything to do with him? Her detail-hunting instincts were terrifying. Julian shot Lucas a desperate look. Lucas froze. What did Julian's marital status have to do with him? Thinking fast, Lucas replied, he just used me as an excuse. When someone doesn't want to get married, they'll say anything to dodge it. Just happened to be in the line of fire. Mrs. Grant nodded thoughtfully. Makes sense. Lucas exhaled in relief. Mr. Grant, too, seemed to relax. But just as things were calming down, Mr. Grant suddenly asked, then, those baby items we saw earlier, those yours? Mrs. Grant's eyes lit up. You have a kid? Lucas was stunned. He'd stuffed the baby stuff into a corner, hidden behind a plastic bag. Add to that the chaos when Mrs. Grant fainted. And Mr. Grant still noticed? Lucas glanced at Julian. Julian whispered, my dad's won best homeroom teacher for like 10 years. Lucas, makes sense. That kind of eyesight comes from decades of catching students from across the courtyard. He took a deep breath. Yes. They're for my daughter. I haven't given them to her yet. She's staying with a friend for now. I'm worried debt collectors might come after her. Mrs. Grant visibly relaxed. No way a man with a kid was romantically involved with her son. Problem solved. But Mr. Grant still looked skeptical. Given your situation, shouldn't you be saving money instead of buying so much? Lucas gave a sheepish smile. Even if I'm broke, I can't let my daughter suffer. Mrs. Grant's tone warmed immediately. You're right, she said, approvingly. That's how a father should be. She paused, then asked, what about the child's mother? She's not involved? Without missing a beat, Lucas said, She passed away. The safest lie in the book. His wife had already died once during the rice pudding saga. What was one more time? The air turned solemn. "I'm so sorry," Mrs. Grant said. "We misunderstood you." Lucas waved it off. "It's okay." He turned to find Julian staring at him with an unreadable expression. "Dead?" Julian repeated flatly. Lucas replied solemnly. "Stone cold." Julian calmly splashed a cup of tea in his face. "Julian." Mrs. Grant scolded. "What are you doing? That's so rude." Julian set the cup down. "Nothing. Just raising a glass on behalf of his dead wife." Julian Grant's parents stayed at his place for 3 days. Since housing in a city was expensive, Julian's apartment was a typical one-bedroom plus study layout, standard for single professionals. Of the 2 rooms, one served as Julian's study. That left only the bedroom as a proper sleeping space. Whenever his parents visited, Julian would give them the bedroom and sleep on the couch himself. Originally, he had planned for Lucas Shaw to go back to his own place, but Lucas worried that Julian might feel unwell at night. Plus, they still needed to keep their story straight in front of Julian's parents. So, Lucas chose to sleep on the living room floor and keep Julian company. The living room had more space, but its ceramic tile flooring made it much colder than the wooden floors in the bedroom. Julian had tried to persuade Lucas several times, warning him that he could catch a cold. Lucas didn't care. "I haven't had a cold in over 10 years, he said lazily. "No way I'm getting one now." Mr. and Mrs. Grant were health enthusiasts and deeply concerned for their son. Every night they insisted that Julian lie down by 10 p.m. and get ready for bed. The first 2 nights, Julian managed to fall asleep easily due to general exhaustion. But on the 3rd night, his internal clock, already conditioned to years of short rest, betrayed him. He tossed and turned for ages without falling asleep. Eventually, he gave up trying. He opened his eyes and stared blankly at the ceiling bathed in moonlight. After a while, his gaze drifted downward and landed on Lucas's sleeping face. The sofa Julian was lying on was quite low, unlike a bed with a frame, so Lucas, lying on the floor, felt very close. All Julian had to do was glance down to see him clearly. Moonlight spilled in through the balcony window, casting soft shadows across Lucas's face. He seemed fast asleep, quiet and still. The moonlight created a faint shadow under his nose, accentuating his sharp features. Without thinking, Julian reached out and pinched Lucas's nose. "You trying to kill me?" Lucas grabbed his hand and opened his eyes. "You'd better cover my mouth too, or you won't suffocate me properly." Julian flinched. "You weren't asleep?" Lucas didn't let go. "I don't dare sleep if you're still awake." "You've got a temper, Dr. Grant. I'm scared." Julian knew he was referring to the cup of tea he'd splashed on him a few nights ago. Even though Lucas hadn't meant to curse him, Julian had still been furious about it. After all, when Lucas declared that the baby's mother was dead, it wasn't just some imaginary woman he was talking about. It was Julian. "You're a doctor. Do you think it's appropriate to joke about people dying?" Julian muttered. "I was talking about my wife," Lucas replied smoothly. "Are you my wife?" Julian's expression froze. He lay back down and stared straight at the ceiling, determined not to acknowledge this man. Lucas smirked triumphantly. Still holding Julian's wrist, he reached for his phone, switched on night mode, and snapped a photo of their intertwined hands. Then he held up the phone and wiggled it in front of Julian's face. "Attempted murder." "I have proof," Julian scoffed and didn't pull away. He seemed to know that the more he fought Lucas, the more trouble he invited. Lucas admired the photo for a while, then tossed the phone aside, only to realize he was still holding Julian's hand, and Julian hadn't tried to pull away either. A gentle breeze slipped through the window, brushing past their hands. Without the usual tension, the gesture no longer looked like two friends. teasing each other. It looked intimate. Mrs. Grant's offhand comment echoed in Lucas's ears. Julian didn't get. Married because of you. That ambiguous line swirled in his mind, making him feel strangely dizzy. He couldn't even figure out what he was thinking anymore. He had only meant to tease Julian. When Julian stopped resisting, he should have found it boring and let go. But for some reason, maybe because of that one sentence, he didn't want to let go. Julian's wrist had clearly defined bones, and his skin was soft and warm. It felt like holding a hot potato. Too hot to hold, but too important to drop. Lucas just sat there, hand warming slowly, unsure what to do. Julian, meanwhile, hadn't expected Lucas to keep holding on. In the moonlit living room, the two of them fell into a strange silence. The only point of contact was Julian's wrist, where he could clearly feel his pulse thudding against Lucas's fingertips. Julian felt like his wrist was burning. He cleared his throat, trying to break the awkward tension. But Lucas spoke at the same time. Hot? Can't sleep? Both entirely unhelpful. Not hot, Lucas said. Julian gave a dry "oh," then go to sleep. Don't want to. Lucas propped himself up with one arm until his eyes met Julian's. The faint bags under his eyes curled slightly under the moonlight. What are you thinking about? Lucas asked. You've been lying here, awake. Is it about the baby? After a pause, he added, Are you planning to keep it a secret, or? Julian went quiet for a while. Let's keep it quiet for now. Unlike Lucas, Julian's parents didn't have a medical background. Lucas could accept Julian's pregnancy as a rare biological anomaly, like a disease, but Julian wasn't sure his parents would be able to. Lucas nodded. Let's talk when you're ready. Then he added, Don't worry about my parents. I'll handle them. Julian's lashes trembled slightly, and the small mole beneath his eye seemed to quiver too. He looked at Lucas, and something shifted in his chest. You've worked hard these past few days, he suddenly said. Technically, Lucas was younger by a few months, but in the way he handled life, chores, social etiquette, everything, he came off far more mature. He had a knack for smoothing out problems. Annoying as he was, there was something solid and reassuring about him. During his parents' stay, Lucas had been tirelessly accommodating. Despite his busy schedule, he made time for Julian's parents. He arranged lunch deliveries ahead of time, coordinated dinner groceries with Mrs. Grant, and even helped her cook while chatting. The Grants enjoyed playing cards, something Julian had always avoided. Learning. Lucas, however, patiently picked it up and joined them nightly, playing just the way they liked, always making Mrs. Grant laugh with her. Small wins. He even found out Mr. Grant loved calligraphy and went out of his way to get a custom brush made by a city's most renowned artisan, a notoriously picky man whose commissions required months of waiting. Somehow, Lucas had convinced him to rush the order. Frankly, he was a better son than Julian. Tomorrow, the Grants would return to B City. Lucas had already prepared local gifts and specialties for them to take home. Julian had always known. Lucas was socially savvy, but being on the receiving end of it was surprisingly touching. His parents had been smiling more than usual these days. They kept bringing up Lucas's name. Julian was pretty sure they were one dinner away from officially adopting him. I didn't want your parents to leave thinking badly of me, Lucas explained. Julian muttered. Your parents must be very fond of you. Lucas smiled, said nothing, and changed the subject. Still can't sleep? Want to watch a movie? Before Julian could answer, a soft click echoed nearby. The sound of a door unlocking. Julian yanked his hand back and buried himself under the blanket. Eyes shut tight. Only after Mrs. Grant returned from the bathroom and closed the door, again did Julian dare peek out. He immediately locked eyes with Lucas, who was grinning. What are you smiling at? Julian hissed, heart racing. He kept his voice low so his mom wouldn't hear. Nothing. Lucas smirked harder. You're cute. Julian scowled. You're the cute one. but his hushed voice lacked its usual bite, making Lucas's smile widen. It had been years since either of them had done anything this childish, sneaking around like teenagers. They bickered quietly for a while. Julian got genuinely annoyed. Lucas had the time of his life. Eventually, Julian had enough. He pressed a finger to Lucas's lips, shutting him up. "Let's just watch a movie." Julian reached around and grabbed Lucas's tablet, opened the local video app, and found nothing but surgery footage. "Don't look at me like that," Lucas said. "I bet you've never downloaded anything besides surgery videos either." Then, with a mischievous glint, he added, "Although, maybe I'm wrong. I don't watch that stuff." Julian muttered. "What stuff?" Lucas grinned. "Julian?" Lucas leaned in. "So what do you like? Japanese, Western, or local?" "Flavor? None of them," Julian snapped. "Then, what movie do you want to watch?" Lucas opened the App Store and pointed to a list of streaming apps. "Pick one." "You meant real movies? What else?" Lucas asked innocently. Julian, clearly annoyed at being tricked twice in a row, downloaded a random app, paid for a membership using Lucas's fingerprint, and pulled up the horror film rankings. He picked one and shoved an earbud into Lucas's ear. Lucas tried to protest. "This is unnecessary." But Julian wasn't about to let him off the hook. He yanked Lucas onto the couch, pinning him with a grip on his wrist. The message was clear: don't even think about leaving. Lucas accepted his fate and looked at the screen just in time to make eye contact with the ghost. He jumped. She showed up way too early, and it only got worse. The plot was about a deadly exam. Your test ranking determined your death order. A full-on anti-elitism PSA. Watching the top students die one by one, Lucas, who had always been the top scorer, went pale. The living room was dark and eerily quiet. Every shadow looked suspicious. Faint footsteps creaked above. Whispers drifted through the air. Suddenly, something brushed his shoulder. Lucas froze. A chill raced down his back. He realized Julian hadn't made a sound in a while. So who or what was beside him? Heart racing, he slowly turned his head. Julian was sound asleep, leaning on his shoulder. Seriously? Julian's breathing was soft and warm against Lucas's neck. The hand Julian had been using to threaten him had gone slack now, gently resting on the back of Lucas's hand, warm and light. Despite the scary music still blasting from the earbuds, Lucas's heart began to calm. He quietly turned off the screen, removed his own earbud, then gently reached over to take Julian's out. His fingers brushed Julian's face, soft, just warm enough. He touched him again, gently. Then he froze, retracted his hand, and looked away. After a long pause, he glanced back. Julian's face was relaxed, eyes closed, lips slightly curved. He was probably dreaming something nice, and Lucas couldn't help but think, yeah, he really is kind of cute. Lucas Shaw was the one who accompanied Julian Grant's parents to the train station. The station was crowded with travelers. Lucas helped carry all the luggage and bags of gifts, walking them all the way to the entrance checkpoint. Julian's mother held tightly onto her son's arm the whole way, reluctant to part, talking endlessly. Mr. Grant, who had been walking beside them, in silence, suddenly patted Lucas on the shoulder and motioned for him to step aside. Julian glanced over. Mrs. Grant said, "Your dad wants to have a word with." Then she turned to Julian and added, "And I'd like to talk to you." "To? What is it, Mom?" She looked toward the distance, then back at him. "Last night, when your father got up to use the bathroom, he saw Lucas standing alone on the balcony. No idea what he was thinking about." She sighed. "It was already past 1 or 2 in the morning. We figured he must have something weighing on his mind. He's had quite the ups and downs lately. It's natural to be unsettled. He seems like a good person. Now that you two are living together, you should take good care of him, Julian." Lucas had probably just been scared stiff by that horror movie. Still. Julian nodded obediently. Then his mother added, "Look at Lucas. His wife's gone, his money's gone. If he didn't have a kid, he might not even want to live. Luckily, he has a daughter. You always say you're too busy to date, but Lucas is the same age as you, and he's already married and has a child." She patted his hand. "You really should learn from him. Settle down, have a child. It gives you something to hold on to." Julian felt a headache coming on. Learn from Lucas? Learn what? That so-called daughter was still tucked neatly inside Julian's own belly. He took a deep breath, trying not to lose his composure. He replied, softly. Mrs. Grant was surprised. She'd tried to persuade him so many times before and always got nowhere. But this time, just by mentioning Lucas, Julian's attitude had completely changed. Truly, nothing motivates like seeing a peer succeed. After the couple left, Julian glanced sideways at Lucas and asked, "What did my dad say to you?" Officially, he encouraged me not to be discouraged by setbacks and even offered to help find me a second wife. But between the lines, Lucas looked at Julian. "Your parents basically asked me to whisper in your ear more often. They want you married with a kid ASAP so they can be grandparents." Lucas wasn't whispering anything. He was already putting that plan into action. Julian felt a bit stifled. Lucas pulled a red envelope out of his pocket and stuffed it into Julian's bag. "Your dad insisted on giving it to me. I didn't dare keep it." He lowered his voice. "If your dad ever finds out we made all that up, and that we actually have a child, no number of orthopedic experts will be able to fix what's coming." Julian suddenly asked, "What were you doing on the balcony last night?" Lucas's eyes flickered. He paused before replying. "Just getting some air. Wasn't it cold?" "It was fine." Just then, he turned and sneezed. Julian instinctively stepped away. Lucas coughed twice. "Oh no," he said, pulling out a face mask and putting it on. Then he handed another one to Julian. "You think I actually caught something?" Julian quietly stepped further away, eyebrows arched. "Didn't you say there's no way you'd get sick?" "Ah, yes, the classic curse declaration." And sure enough, Lucas, who hadn't had a cold in over a decade, went down hard, burning with a fever of 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The hospital, which usually took ages to approve leave, immediately handed him a sick note in sheer panic. After the fever subsided, Lucas didn't want to risk infecting Julian, so he returned to his own apartment to recover. Julian didn't think it was wise for him to be home alone, but considering his own pregnancy, he couldn't take the risk. So he hired a full-time caregiver for Lucas. The caregiver treated Julian like her boss and texted him updates about Lucas every day, including time-stamped photos. At 5:57 p.m., Julian sat in the operating room break area, eating dinner. As he scrolled through his phone, his colleague Wu Rui teased, "What are you looking at? Messages from your girlfriend?" The day Yu Xin delivered lunch to Julian's office, gossip had spread through the department like wildfire, thanks to loudmouth Yu Sang. Everyone assumed Julian was dating the lunch-delivering girl. Wu Rui grinned. "When are you getting married? We'd love to come." "Party?" Julian dodged the first question entirely. "What girlfriend?" "That girl who brought you lunch," Wu Rui said. "Isn't she your girlfriend?" Julian shook his head. Wu Rui looked surprised. "I thought she was. Guess I was happy for nothing." Then he added, "And Lucas got mad for nothing too." "Lucas?" Yu Sang said he told Lucas your girlfriend came by. Apparently Lucas's face changed. "If I didn't know better, I'd think he likes you." Wu Rui laughed. "Remember when you were chasing after Zhonglan? Lucas went after her right after. That was sketchy. And he argues with you all the time, but not with anyone else. He's like one of those grade schoolboys pulling pigtails on the girl he likes." Julian, what was going on lately? First, his parents suspected him of dating Lucas. Now, Wu Rui suggested Lucas might have feelings for him. Julian didn't know whether to roll his eyes at Wu Rui's bizarre analogy or agree that Lucas was annoyingly childish. He knew Wu Rui was mostly joking. If Wu Rui truly believed it, he wouldn't have said it out loud. Still, Julian couldn't help asking, "Do we really look like we get along that?" "Well, no," Wu Rui said honestly. "You two seem like you don't get along at all." Julian nodded, reassured, and looked back at his phone. It was already 6:01. Usually, the caregiver texted him on the dot at 6. He was about to type a message when a video call request popped up. Startled, he accidentally answered. Before he could react, Lucas's face appeared on screen. "I just wanted you to see how I'm doing." Wu Rui stared. Julian instantly ended the call, turned to Wu Rui, and said, "Wrong number. We're not close." "Ever helpful?" Wu Rui nodded. "Maybe it's something work-related." "We're really not close," Julian insisted. "Sure," Wu Rui said. "Not close." But before he could even finish saying the word close, Lucas called. Again, Julian rejected it with a blank expression and, under Wu Rui's amused gaze, took an angry bite of rice. "Julian, stop calling. I'm in the OR. Text me." "Lucas, nothing urgent. Just checking if you're feeling okay. I've been sleeping badly these past 2 nights. I'm worried I passed something to you." Julian suddenly felt a little bad for hanging up. He typed, "You feeling better?" "Much better. Probably ready to go back to work in 2 days. I just didn't want you to worry. Thought a video call would help." Julian hesitated. "I didn't tell the caregiver to send me photos." "I know. I told her to send them so you could admire my handsome face." Julian pursed his lips. "No one wants to admire you. If you don't, our daughter does." Lucas shamelessly shifted the blame, then sent a complaint. "Your caregiver is too loyal. I asked how you were doing, if you got sick, and she said her contract is with you, so she can't disclose anything." Julian called the caregiver and told her to keep Lucas informed. When he switched back to the chat, he saw a new message. "Great news, I got the research grant. I was going to scream like last year, but no one was around to hear." Had they really reached the stage of using sad puppy emojis? Julian replied with a plain "oh," then felt it seemed cold, so he added a meme, a stick figure gently patting a skull. There. After a while, with no response, Julian frowned. By etiquette, shouldn't Lucas ask if he got the grant too? Somewhat annoyed, he stared at Lucas's last message, reading it twice. Then the word "last year" caught his eye. Last year, they had checked the grant results in the office together. Lucas had been practically shouting, I got it. Annoyed, Julian had snapped, "What are you, a drama student?" Only he and Lucas had applied for that level of funding. Wu Rui had joked, "Aren't you worried Dr. Grant didn't get it and might come punch you?" Lucas had replied, "Not a chance. If I got it, Julian definitely got it." Right then, Julian checked, and he had gotten it too. Now, staring at the silent chat, Julian suddenly understood why Lucas hadn't asked. Lucas believed in his heart that if he succeeded, Julian would too. Julian wanted to argue that success wasn't always so neat, that luck played a part, but the truth was, every time they applied, they either both got it or both didn't, like it was fate. Maybe it was fate, or maybe their skills really were that precisely matched. Julian didn't know. Maybe it was Lucas's overly chatty messages that stirred something. But after work, Julian came home and suddenly found the apartment unbearably quiet. Even when Lucas was around, they didn't talk that much. But now, something felt empty. Lucas had been gone before, and Julian hadn't minded. But now? Silence was jarring, hollow. He blamed the pregnancy hormones. Maybe they were making him moody. He turned on the speakers and let music fill the space. It helped until The playlist turned into a string of love songs. That left him with a strange feeling in his chest. Something odd. Julian realized with surprise that he kind of missed Lucas. It was like the loneliness of staying in the dorm alone after everyone had gone home for break, but deeper, heavier, a new kind of emotion, one he didn't quite know what to do with. No one could say for sure whether it was because Julian Grant had been thinking about him constantly, but Lucas Shaw returned to the hospital sooner than expected. Coming out of the outpatient wing, Julian heard from colleagues that Lucas was back. Apparently, the illness had done little to dampen his energy, because as soon as Julian approached the office door, he heard laughter from inside. There was a familiar male voice, Lucas, and a female voice he didn't recognize. He paused outside. Wu Rui suddenly appeared behind him. "Why are you standing there like a statue? Go in." Julian. Lucas looked up from his conversation, his eyes crinkling with laughter. When he heard Wu Rui's voice, he glanced toward the door, right into Julian's eyes. Julian nodded politely and walked to his desk. Wu Rui caught sight of the woman sitting beside Lucas and smiled. "Who's this?" Julian, flipping through a patient file nearby, unconsciously rubbed the edge of the page. Lucas chuckled. "She's Sister Guo from admin, the one who issued our fines." Julian tossed the now crumpled medical chart to the side without a word. Sister Guo introduced herself with a grin. "Guo Shui, from administration. You must not recognize me because you're too well behaved to ever get fined. Nice to meet you," Wu Rui said, shaking her hand. "I think I'm older than you. Won't call you Sister Guo. So what brings admin to our department today?" Guo Shui pointed at the calendar and notebook she'd placed on the desk. "We heard Dr. Yu got promoted to attending, so I'm here to deliver some congrats on behalf of admin." She then pulled out a flyer. "Also, we've got a new task. Our hospital is hosting the annual Mid-Autumn Gala. It's your department's turn to perform." The Mid-Autumn Gala was a long-standing tradition at Jiwa Hospital. Officially, it was about showcasing the modern spirit of doctors. Unofficially, it was just a way to impress upper management. Though the memo claimed all employees were welcome, in reality, most of the audience consisted of leaders' relatives. The best it ever achieved was filling the first 2 rows. Doctors and nurses barely had time to eat, let alone attend a talent show, much less perform in one. That's why, after much debate, the hospital finally created a rotation schedule among departments. The moment Guo Shui mentioned this, Wu Rui, who had just been chatting away, immediately snapped upright and fixed his gaze on his screen, acting like his patient chart was a classified document. Lucas, unfazed due to his familiarity with Guo Shui, reached for the flyer. Clearly not about to miss the spectacle, the flyer was beautifully made, deep blue trifold with gold lettering. The background showed Jihua Hospital under a glowing full moon, bathed in night lights, wrapped in clouds and shadows. A shame, really, like flirting with a blind man. No one wanted to go to the show. Lucas's eyes landed on the event title printed across the front. Full Moon of Mid-Autumn, Heritage of Medicine. He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't we have this exact theme a few years ago?" "It's the easiest one to reuse," Guo Shui explained cheerfully. "We just put a new spin on it each year. Director Monroe already picked your department's act, and it's actually pretty creative." "We?" Lucas's smile froze. "Director Monroe wants me to perform?" "Yup." Guo Shui was all business. "I just came from her office. Your department is performing the theme song from The Legend of the White Snake. She wants you and Dr. Grant to sing it, because Shushian was a doctor too. Very on theme. Gotta say, Director Monroe may be old, but she's still trendy." "I'd never have thought of that." Lucas looked like he'd been hit by a truck. What kind of teacher does this to her students? Julian suddenly stood up, face like stone. "I'll go talk to Director Monroe." Once again, the OBGYN department's infamous duo, Grant and Shaw, stood shoulder to shoulder in the deputy director's office. Director Monroe looked up from her newspaper and smiled. Young people should showcase their talents more. Two handsome young men. Why hide in the OR all day? Director, I really can't, Julian said. I've got surgery that day. The gala's at 8 p.m. on Sunday, she replied calmly. Just do one less case that day. Let Dr. Shu handle it. I'll call him now. Dr. Shu, another deputy chief in the department, was a kind older man who didn't know Julian and Lucas all that well due to the generation gap. Lucas jumped in, trying to play the sympathy card, but Dr. Shu's been busy with his kids' overseas school stuff lately. That's all done. He's free now, Monroe said with a warm smile. He'd much rather be in the OR than on stage. Julian fell silent. He glanced at Lucas, trying to mentally signal him to find a way out of this. Lucas got the hint and tried again. Director, we've got evening rounds. Have a student cover for you. It's just 10 minutes on stage. You'll be in and out. Won't delay anything. Director, you know Dr. Grant and I don't really get along. Lucas finally used his last resort. There's no chemistry. We can't perform together. You two did that surgery together on Zhang Yun, didn't you? She replied, if you can cooperate in the OR, a duet should be a breeze. Director Monroe had been a deputy director for many years and knew how to talk like a leader. Calm, measured, and impossible to argue with. That settles it, she said with finality. I'll be in the audience that night. Then she sweetened the deal. Around New Year, I'm flying abroad for a conference. If you both perform well, I'll talk to the hospital president. Maybe take you with me. She turned to Lucas. But if you mess up, no chance. Then looked at Julian. And if he messes up, you still can't go. Lucas, what? What does his performance have to do with me? Lucas protested. You think he'll cooperate? That's a miracle. Director Monroe knew full well that Julian was far harder to deal with than Lucas. That's exactly why she'd entrusted the mission to Lucas. This was a rare chance for their department to perform, and she'd heard the hospital president's daughter would be back from overseas. She was quite looking forward to the event. She'd known the girl since childhood. Smart, beautiful, and kind. Monroe had always liked her two young, capable students. Sure, it was just a performance on the surface, but she was also matchmaking. Middle-aged folks loved seeing young people find happiness. Monroe was no different. She knew both Julian and Lucas had been working incredibly hard. While admirable, she worried they'd burn themselves out and miss the chance to find someone. Both were attractive, talented, and well-matched with the president's daughter. If something blossomed between them, all the better. Their careers would thrive too. But she couldn't just come out and say, I want to introduce you to someone. These days, young people hated forced setups. A casual duet? That was the perfect excuse. Plus, she hoped the two would learn to get along. Rivalry was fine in youth, but long-term animosity wasn't good for the department. If it escalated into lifelong hatred, it would hurt everyone. She wasn't worried about Lucas. He might complain, but he wouldn't disobey an order from a beloved mentor. Julian, though, if he didn't want to do something, even the hospital president couldn't force him. Monroe knew them too well. Lucas was water, adaptable. Julian was stone, unyielding. Her only hope was that Lucas could wear that stone down. She didn't say any of this out loud, just smiled, sipped from her thermos, and waved her hand. I've got a meeting. I'll wait for good news from you two. And with that, the conversation ended. The two stood frozen in place. After a long silence, Lucas finally muttered, Julian, are you close with Guo Shui? Julian suddenly interrupted. Huh? Lucas blinked, thrown by the change of subject. Yeah, we get along. He figured Julian needed a favor from admin. If you want to ask her something, just let me know. I'll talk to her. She'll definitely help. Julian gave him a blank look. So about the performance, Not going. Julian cut him off and left without hesitation. Julian, Lucas called after him. Julian walked faster, not even glancing back. Lucas watched him go, utterly baffled. What the hell? You don't want to? Go, fine. But why are you mad? It hadn't been long since Lucas Shaw had sided with Julian Grant. When he betrayed him. In Julian's 20-something square meter bedroom, the surround sound speaker was blasting the theme song of The Legend of the White Snake at full volume, shaking the room in a relentless 360-degree assault. The once serene bed now rattled and creaked under the chaos. On the bed, the two doctors were tangled in a scuffle. Julian showed no mercy, aiming straight for Lucas's pressure points. But Lucas focused all his attention on protecting the speaker, letting Julian land every hit while remaining unyielding. He took the blows, but the speaker never left his hands. Lucas Shaw. Lucas grinned, infuriatingly smug. Sounds great, doesn't it? This all started an hour ago. As usual, they drove back separately, but Lucas once again walked into Julian's apartment like it was his own. The floor mattress in the bedroom was still there. The bathroom toiletries were untouched. Even the bath towel smelled like it had been freshly laundered and sun-dried. You washed my towel? Lucas asked, genuinely surprised. The washing machine did it, Julian replied, toweling his hair dry. But you put it in the washing machine, Lucas pressed. Julian looked up, eyes drifting. The cleaning lady did. He'd hired a housekeeper who came once a week for cleaning. Lucas frowned. Then why didn't she wash mine last time? Julian rolled his eyes. Before he could answer, Lucas had already grabbed the pink bunny on the bed and said, "Did you miss me while I was sick?" "No, I wasn't talking to you," Lucas said, hugging the bunny. "Even if the sun rose in the west, Dr. Grant wouldn't miss me." He squeezed the plush. "I was asking her." They had agreed. If Julian had cramps or didn't feel well during the night, he could toss the bunny at Lucas. He'd promised he'd wake up immediately. After all this time, their revolutionary friendship was firmly established. Julian snatched the bunny back. "Shower first. No bathing, no touching the bed, or anything on it, including the bunny." Lucas pouted and dragged his clothes into the bathroom. After both had showered, Julian came out to find Lucas tinkering with something on the nightstand. He looked over. It was a portable speaker. Drying his hair with a towel, Julian watched as Lucas, slow and deliberate, hit the play button. Instantly, a painfully familiar melody burst into the room. A series of dramatic approximately s filled Julian's ears. He recognized it immediately. The theme song of The Legend of the White Snake, a drama he'd watched years ago with his parents. The show had left a deep impression, not so much for the plot, but for its musical, theater-style singing that drilled itself into your brain. The melody triggered something deep in Julian's DNA. In an instant, he was transported back more than a decade. The song had already jumped to the main lyrics. The voice of composer Zuo Hongyuan rang out, full and resonant. "Westlake's beauty in March skies, ah. Spring rain like wine, willows like mist, approximately. The tune was so familiar, Julian had to bite his tongue to stop himself from singing along. Lucas, meanwhile, hummed a few lines without a care. "Haven't heard this in ages. Used to think it was just catchy, but now it's kind of beautiful." At the time, Julian didn't realize how serious things were. He just silently judged Lucas for so quickly caving to Director Monroe. Little did he expect that Lucas, protecting his precious speaker, would subject Julian to a full hour of relentless looping, even with the blow dryer on max. Julian couldn't drown out the music. "Are you insane?" Julian finally snapped and tried to seize the speaker. The chase began, music swelling triumphantly in the background. Julian, on the brink of a breakdown, lunged and missed again. Lucas had a knack for dodging just in time. They scuffled across the room, and, somehow, It wasn't clear how. They ended up wrestling on the bed. Julian was losing it. He found himself missing the days when Lucas was sick and the apartment was peaceful. He used to think it was too quiet. Now he just wanted to chuck Lucas and his surround sound system out the window. Homes were meant to be quiet. He never should have let Lucas move in. On his third failed attempt to seize the speaker, Julian finally gave up. Clutching his ears, he sat up and hurled a pillow at Lucas's head. His eyes were stormy. "What the hell do you want?" Lucas, finally satisfied with the chaos, leaned back and smiled. "Agree to perform with me and I'll turn it off." Julian glared at him. "Absolutely not." Lucas rubbed his ribs. "Then I'm not turning it off," he added smugly. "The sound quality sucks, but it's loud. That's its only strength. Considering your tendency to destroy things, I bought more than one. Even if you smash this one, I've got backups." Julian took a deep breath and once again began questioning every life decision that led to this moment, especially the one where he let Lucas move in. The music kept droning on. Fate brings us together across 1,000 miles. Without it, even hand in hand, we can't hold tight. 10 years to earn a boat ride together. 100 to share a pillow through the night approximately. What kind of karmic debt had Julian Grant accumulated to end up bound to Lucas Shaw in this bizarre fate? First, they had ended up sharing a bed for reasons beyond comprehension. Then came the even more absurd pregnancy. And now, Lucas was living in his home, blaring music and issuing veiled threats. "I'll give you 10 seconds, Julian said coldly. "If you don't turn it off, I'm leaving." Standing by the bed, his glasses glinting under the overhead light, his sharp gaze sliced right through Lucas. 10, 9, 8. Click. The music stopped. Lucas pursed his lips. "Little countdown gremlin." Julian pointed at the bedding on the floor and said with a frosty tone, "Off." "My bed." Lucas obediently climbed off the bed, still clutching his precious speaker, and lay down on the floor mattress. But the moment his back hit the bedding, he frowned. Something felt off. The cotton padding beneath the sheet was thicker, softer, warmer. "Did your mom upgrade this for me too?" Julian wordlessly shut off the bedroom light with a sharp flick. He didn't answer. He didn't want to. Ruan Shufang was getting discharged from the hospital. Her surgery had gone well, and her recovery was smooth. Post-operative pathology confirmed negative margins, meaning she could safely keep her uterus. At one point during treatment, Julian had explained that her condition was caused by HPV, a virus primarily transmitted through sexual contact. For prevention and follow-up, he suggested her husband, Mahao, get tested as well. It wasn't an unusual suggestion, yet many spouses of cervical cancer patients refused, accusing hospitals of scamming for extra fees or insisting they had no symptoms and couldn't possibly be infected. Some would even lash out at the doctors. "She's the one who's sick. Why are you telling me to get tested?" Nearly every OB/GYN doctor at Jiwa Hospital had been called a quack, at least once, for saying this. Julian had assumed Mahao would be just as stubborn. His first impression wasn't great, but to his surprise, Mahao had agreed immediately and even brought the results to Julian himself, negative for HPV. Everyone on Ruan's care team breathed a sigh of relief. Julian handed the report back, and Mahao bowed deeply. Since Ruan was stable, Julian hadn't been paying extra attention beyond routine rounds and reviewing reports from Shaolei. So, when he saw Mahao again on discharge day, he was a little surprised. Ruan had lost some hair due to chemotherapy. Mahao carefully helped her put on a wool hat, then pulled out a red silk banner and handed it to Julian. Pressed beneath it was an envelope. Julian thought it was money and immediately frowned, handing it back. Mahao stammered, Dr. Grant, it's not a red envelope, it's a letter. I wrote to thank you Julian had no time to read it during the day. It wasn't until after a surgery, around 10 p.m., that he finally opened the envelope while sipping plain, hot water by his desk lamp. Sure enough, it wasn't money. Just a few sheets of handwritten notes on rough brown paper. Ma Hao's handwriting was crooked and hard to read, but Julian took the time to go through every word. It was framed as a thank you letter, but read more like a personal confession. Ma Hao apologized, reflected on his outdated beliefs, and by the end, had completely veered off topic, pledging to be a better husband. Julian's name barely appeared in the second half. Julian's lips twitched faintly. He folded the letter, slid it back into the envelope, and opened the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a neatly arranged stack of thank you letters he had received over the years. He placed Ma Hao's on top, then closed the drawer. I saw you saying hang the silk banner Ma Hao gave you right next to your disciplinary slip, Lucas said casually the next morning, splashing water on his face at the sink. Very eye-catching contrast. It was eye-catching. On the bulletin board, a bright red disciplinary slip detailing how Julian had attacked a disruptive family member. Right below it, a glowing silk banner from that same family, praising him for his miraculous hands and compassionate heart. Together, they had become Jihua's newest urban legend. Staff and students alike whispered about Dr. Grant's greatest hits. Julian took his job seriously. He didn't expect endless gratitude. He cared more about whether patients followed medical advice and recovered, well, but receiving recognition from someone who had once doubted. That was something no doctor could resist smiling at, especially in OBGYN, where male doctors faced more scrutiny than female ones. Since entering the field, Julian had dealt with countless people like Ma Hao, heard insults far worse than pervert. That's why most male OB/GYN doctors hadn't chosen the field willingly. They'd been assigned to it when their exam scores didn't qualify them for other departments, but not Julian. And not Lucas. They had both ranked OB/GYN as their first choice. I've always wondered, Lucas said, finishing his face wash. Why did you pick OB/GYN? Julian took a sip of hot soy milk. I've always wondered why you picked it. Lucas's eyes flickered. That's a long story. Julian glanced over. I know you asked around about my department ranking. Lucas paused, drying his face. And someone told me your top 3 choices were ophthalmology, cardiac surgery, and neurosurgery. That was true, Julian said. But once I heard you were snooping around, I changed my picks. Julian had never cared much about departments. Healing was healing. No matter where. Every specialty mattered. He was confident he'd get the best mentor in any department, so he'd simply pick the top 3 based on popularity, until his roommate told him Lucas had been asking about his choices. Julian had felt exhausted. After years of academic rivalry, he wanted out. So he scratched all 3 and filled in OB/GYN instead. The least recommended option. Somebody had to choose it, right? He thought, whatever came his way, he'd deal with it. Even if the whole world looked down on OB/GYN, he'd still thrive, as long as he could escape Lucas. But then, Lucas had picked OB/GYN too. To this day, Julian couldn't understand how. He'd submitted his form last, showed no one, and never mentioned it aloud. Lucas shouldn't have known. I was trying to avoid you, Lucas admitted, eyes complicated. To be safe, I even put OB/GYN first. Figured it was the one place you'd never go. Julian, if nothing else, today proved one thing. Human beings desperately need to communicate better. Well, aren't we just star-crossed? Lucas mused. Bound to meet again. And again. Then he broke into song. Ah! Julian flinched. That haunting tune, the theme song from the legend of the White Snake, shattered all the progress he'd made in forgetting it. God help him. He'd even caught himself humming it in the OR the day before. Only when he saw Yu Sang staring at him like he'd lost his mind did he snap back to reality. Julian shook the memory from his head and shoved his breakfast tray into the dishwasher. Grabbing his briefcase, he headed for the door. "Wait for me," Lucas shouted. "Not waiting," Julian replied coldly. "How many surgeries you got today?" Lucas asked, still chewing his steamed bun. "Not many," Lucas perked up. "Then eat dinner at home tonight." "I'll cook." Julian paused, hand on the doorknob. "On second thought, turns out I've got quite a few." Lucas squinted. "Could your acting be any worse?" He waved a hand. "I don't care. You're eating at home tonight, or I'll be devastated. You can't possibly leave me to—" "I can." Dr. Grant closed the door without hesitation, leaving Lucas with nothing but his own echo. "Cheech," Lucas muttered, flopping back into his chair and biting into his bun, like it had betrayed him. Heartless.
If this chapter moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Nova Media. Thanks for listening.